What a day. We were just here talking about how busy our work days were and how it wasn't one of those days you can really check the internet too much. And then you get on Twitter and you're just like, all of the things at once happened across the entire NFL. There were highs, there were lows, and we are here to talk about all of them. Perry, how are you?
What an emotional roller coaster of a day if you were a Packers fan. Truly the definition of an emotional roller coaster. There were releases, there were huge signings, there were everything in between. We're going to go over all of it here. Please bring your questions, bring your thoughts, bring your
Alcohol.
yeah. If you have a drink in the chat, let us know what you're drinking. Maggie, what are you drinking?
It is an Irish cream stout because it's St. Patty's Day week. So
There we
love
go.
a good theme.
Irish cream stout. So today was the official first day of we just got breaking news. The Panthers are trading Brian Burns to the Giants. 5-year, 150 million max, 87.5 million guaranteed. The day isn't even over yet.
I love Brian Burns, but
Me too. I'm glad he's not stuck in Carolina. Today was the official opening of the legal tampering window. So,
and boy was there tampering. Boy was there a lot.
Was there tampering? The league season doesn't even start until Wednesday. However, I guess teams can begin all of their discussions and signings of free agents today. And there were things. So, where do you want to start?
Let's just try.
Bad news? You want to start with the happy news?
Let's try to go in chronological order.
Okay.
So what would have been first? I think the Bakhtiari was first. The news was like, I think that's kind of what came out first. And so what were your thoughts on that initial release? Because I know we had kind of talked about the possibility of it. It felt like it could be done after June 1. Of course, obviously we know that it did not happen June 1. It happened today. So did you have like an initial reaction or did you kind of see it coming?
Yeah, David Bakhtiari. I just feel like everything has always been on the table with David Bakhtiari. Like any scenario outcome wouldn't have surprised me anymore because he's just been such a wild card for so long. And so the release, like, I don't know, I don't know. No, it didn't necessarily surprise me. I think it happening today in hindsight actually made sense because it cleared 20 million in cap space. So we'll get to it. Obviously, this is 3 moves down the line, but their big splash signing today was obviously, as everyone in here knows, I don't think this is spoiler alert. The Packers signed Xavier McKinney and they needed that space, right? They needed that money. And so same with the signing of Josh Jacobs. So I think like it makes sense, but it's still really bittersweet. Like I think a part of me still really hoped that the knee would be better and in some form or fashion, like David Bakhtiari would finish his career in Green Bay. Obviously in like a business sense and from like just a health perspective, the chances of that happening were starting to that window was really closing, especially after, he played 1 game in the 2023 season. But, it's hard to watch. I mean, he has a case to be a Hall of Fame left tackle, like one of like the greatest franchise players that we've been able to watch, get released. And he still wants to play. That sucks. I think just like the end of his career sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the writing was kind of on the wall too at the combine when Goody was making comments about how he seems farther away from playing still. So like you get to that point where he plays week 1, and what a way to go out, right? Cheesehead TV tweeted it. A bunch of people have commented that for his last game as a Packer to flip the bird to the Bears at Soldier Field, like that's how you want to end your career as a Packer if you don't get to like formally retire in the green and gold. But yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense now in hindsight that it probably was something that the Packers were toying with, maybe something that would have happened later. But then when they were actually all in on some of the other free agents that we're going to talk about, needed to clear up that cap space, which makes sense. So let's shift then into the first signing that the Packers made this morning. bringing in Josh Jacobs. And this was so funny to me because on our show last week, when we were looking at free agent options, we talked about the possibility that the Packers might bring in a running mate for Aaron Jones in free
Right.
agency. And what would that look like? And how would we feel if they signed a player like a running back and potentially ignored the rest of the market or the defensive side of the ball? So, for a brief hour potentially of time, we had a really, really fun tandem in Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones. So let's talk about that initial reaction here first.
Okay, well, this was before we knew what was to come. So for a brief moment, yes. I mean, the Josh, look, you and I talked about the potential to sign a running back in our preview of free agency. It is the only area of need on, I shouldn't say the only. It is an area of need on the offensive side of the ball, that running back 2
Mhm.
spot. I think now we know Josh Jacobs is now gonna fill that running back 1 spot. Gross, I hate it. No, I hate it. I hate all of it. Um, I I think it's an interesting move of all of them. You tweeted it out, and I think you make a great point. Like, Goot loves taking the swing on the second contract, the post-rookie contract. He's 26. He was fantastic until this past season. I'm willing to write off that the Raiders were just a hot mess in 2023, right? Like,
Yeah.
fire their coach midseason, terrible offensive line, no
QB
quarterback.
carousel. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I'm willing to write it off. The one thing that gives me pause is he has so many touches. Like,
Yeah.
he already has been, like, ridden into the ground, and he's 26. So, that isn't interesting to me, and also it still needs a mate. Like, it still doesn't solve the problem that, like, there still isn't a running back too. Now, they'll probably draft someone, but it's just like, you the money is better. Like, the money I think on paper looks bad. I actually think it's really just like a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if the 4 years is fake. So it's really a 2-year deal plus a rookie plus Emmanuel Wilson. Fine. I just like to have it done at the release of Aaron Jones, like, hate it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the human side of this, right? Like we talked about when the combine news came out that AJ Dillon probably wasn't going to come back. You know, it hurts because you love the players and you love the people, but the business side of not bringing AJ Dillon back made sense. The
Right.
business side is a little bit harder with Aaron Jones because you saw the spark and you saw what he was able to bring to the offense in the latter half of the season. And that's kind of what like my coworkers and I were talking about today and just people in general when you hear like these kinds of things and from a like a paper business decision it makes some sense, but the Packers have to just not feel great about what Aaron Jones has left. Do you know what I mean? Like we've seen them
Yeah.
make the move 1 year early historically and
Yeah.
maybe they think that's all there is. So now they're bringing in someone who is much younger, giving him the same kind of contract they gave Aaron Jones a couple years ago. But, like, you're right. Feelings, it is, like, the worst. That was like a gut punch. I thought there was no way that that would happen. It was like the Andy Herman tweet, "Carve it into your skin in
Yeah, no,
blood,"
my
like
stomach legit dropped. Like, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah,
I
I thought
mean,
it was like one
he
of those
was
fake
hurt all
Schefter
season.
tweets.
Like,
Yeah.
he was hurt all season. Like, I think, like, if you take the emotional side out of it, like, the business case for it makes sense.
Mhm.
Is Aaron Jones worth $12 million? I mean, they're paying Josh Jacobs the same amount of money. Like, they're paying him essentially $12 million a year. It's not really that, right? But, like, is Aaron Jones worth $12 million a year?
If he plays the way that he played at the end of the
If
season, yeah.
he Right, if he plays a full season, if he plays a full 16, 17 game, potentially, yeah,
I'm curious,
he
like,
did it,
what
and he hasn't.
well, and I'm curious what their number looks like. You know, if they wanted Jones to come down to 8
Right.
or, you know, like, what would Jacobs have taken less? Like, I think Jacobs was the insurance policy that they didn't know they needed and then got, and then
Right, right. I
it
agree.
resulted in the dominoes.
Right. I just, like, you said it too because you DM'd me this, and I agree, is, like, Jones has also taken so many so many deals
Mhm.
for this team, and it's like he knows that this is the last
This is his
one.
last contract, yep.
Right, and you don't go to Drew Rosenhaus if you're not trying to get, like, as much as humanly possible out, like, you're trying to milk as much as possible out of this, like, good and,
And
like
rightfully so, yeah.
right, I want Aaron like, Aaron should get as much as possible, he deserves it, and he's a great back, and he's gonna have a market. That's the other
Mhm.
thing is that, like, you wanna talk about leverage, like, he has plenty of leverage based on the way he played down the stretch. Um, I just, like, don't know. It's really hard. Again, like, I'm not in the building, and I don't know how they feel about the situation, and obviously, they're trying to get younger, like, we know that,
It's
but,
hard
like
to get much younger, but they're somehow doing it. Like
right, I mean, now, literally, the oldest person on that side of the ball is Elton Jenkins, who's 28. Um, but, like, how do you make the case that the Packers offense is better without Aaron Jones on the team? Like,
Right.
how do you make that argument to me?
Yeah, and I
I
mean,
don't
like
know.
well, and on paper, again, like, Jacobs, two-time All-Pro, has just shy of 7,000 scrimmage yards. Interestingly, I didn't realize he had never had a receiving touchdown. I thought that was, like, fascinating given the way that he's played his entire career, like, huh. But like you said, like, the longevity of his wear and tear on his body, like, Jones has never really been utilized like a true RB1.
Yeah.
So, hopefully, and maybe he's just a stopgap, like you said. The Packers like to front load some of their contracts, like to do things to make a 4-year deal really more like a 2-year deal. So maybe they have their heart set on somebody in this draft class or the next draft class. Like I it makes sense, understand it, but boy, I would have
I
liked it so much more if it was Jones and Jacobs in the deal
I
together.
just, like I don't know. Again, also, like, how do you quantify, someone's value off the field?
Right.
Like, how do you quantify what Aaron Jones means to this franchise? How do you quantify his leadership and, like, how much the locker room values him? Like, like, it's irreplaceable.
Mhm.
And, like, I don't know. I think Zach Cruz tweeted it, and I'm trying to find it right now. His stats, and he's the gist of it is that he's, like, one of the greatest offensive players this franchise has ever seen. Aaron
Yeah.
Jones is. I'm gonna find it really quick. Okay, third in Packers history in rushing yards, fourth in rushing touchdowns, eighth in yards from scrimmage. So that's period. And seventh in total touchdowns. Seventh in total touchdowns. Think about how many people on the Packers have caught/carried touchdowns. Like, one of
Yeah.
the best offensive players in team history got released today. That
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it. I really hate it. And it like, to me, again, we're gonna get to the exciting news, and by all accounts, right, too, like, it's not to say, like, Josh Jacobs is, I think, a good addition of the top running backs. Like, I think they got good value for him, and I'm excited about what he can bring. And by all accounts, he's a great dude.
Mhm.
I've heard great things about, like, again, like, the locker room aspect of it all, but it taints the day for me. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah. No. Look at Papa Goldstein's got some good advice, some wisdom in the chat. But yeah, no, I mean, what did Aaron Nagler tweet earlier? It's not show friends, it's show business. Like
Yeah, it's business.
but no, I mean, like, absolutely, you're allowed to feel all those feelings. I think most of the Packer world feels all those feelings. And the locker room, is not better without Aaron Jones. I don't know if the football team as it stands today is better without Aaron Jones, but you get really close with the signing of, like, a Josh Jacobs, the flexibility that you have in the draft, and
Yeah.
I think that's all part of it. And it just, not to, reiterate the point, but it reminds me of, like, Josh Sitton and
Yeah.
Balaga and
Yeah.
Jordy and the moves that suck and they sting. I think this one stings the worst for me personally, but same token of they're going to make the move a year early rather than make it a year late, especially if they truly, truly think that their window is in the immediate now. And I think part of the release, I'm not sure the release happens if they don't have this next player lined up. So that's also part of it, right? Is now they've fixed the glaring weakness that was on paper in their secondary. So thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, well, okay, here's what I'll say before we go further. I don't know if this fully plugs the entire hole. I think the Packers should sign another safety, like one of that next level. If you listen to our last episode, Maggie made a fantastic point that there's that hybrid linebacker safety with, you know, Simmons chin vibe that could go a long way. And I think that actually would pair nicely with the Packers signing probably like the biggest safety in free agency, right? Which is Xavier
for
McKinney.
Sure. Yeah.
They got it done. And it's wild to me because the Packers have been in the running, like they're always in the running, right? For these like big names, and you always kind of get your hopes up, and then they go somewhere else. And this time, Goot really did the thing, and he signed Xavier McKinney to a 4-year deal, $68 million. I don't know if did we see like full numbers yet, or is that all we've seen so far?
The only number I saw so far was the 25 mil in year one.
Okay.
Like
so it's front loaded, which is cool. I mean, when you listen to Jeff Hafley explain his like ideal safety for his defense, he's literally describing Xavier McKinney. So
just holding up a picture of Xavier McKinney
without saying it. So I'm sure Haf is super pumped. I mean, McKinney is. I mean, he's the number 1 rated safety by PFF the last every season that he's been in the league so far. He is an absolute stud playmaker. He's everything the Packers haven't had for the last few seasons. And he's going to get paired with the best boundary corner in the league. And it's going to be super fun. And I'm really excited to see what Jeff does. But how did you feel when this came out, like right on the tail end of that last news?
I mean, I was like really in my feelings, right? So I'm devastated and heartbroken, and I'm like processing at work, and then that news comes out, and I was like, this is absolutely a fake account. Like, I will give this no credit. And then it turned out to not be. And it was, I mean, it was one of those things that it feels like doesn't happen when you're a Packers fan, right? Like you get used to, oh, the Packers were close. They were right in there. They were in the conversation. They're going to be involved in every conversation. They're going to be used as leverage. And then he actually comes to the defense. And I mean, I think if you asked a lot of Packer fans, what would be your number 1 player in free agency, or like who's at the top of your wish list, he would have been the number 1 player. But if at least top 3, if not your number 1. So just really exciting. Like we talk about a new defense or a new defensive coordinator and what can they do with the pieces they have. And it would have been cool to see what Jeff Hafley could do with the pieces that he had, but to go out and get him like the guy that is oh so important in the type of defense that he likes to play makes all the difference in the world. Because we talked, right? Like, well, could they do it with Rudy Ford? Could they do it with Jonathan Owens? Like, could they do it with Savage? And you're like, maybe, like, it might look a little bit different. Maybe he can get more production out of them. You know that he's going to get it done with Xavier McKinney. And I think that is what's so exciting, is this new look defense that we're hearing about is actually going to look a lot different.
Yeah. And like, I mean, we saw Savage get signed to the Jaguars also. So like you knew Sav wasn't coming back. And then with who's left in the room, you're feeling very about that. You know, like for me, it was like, all right, if it's not going to be Savage with all his like really high upside traits, they're just going to have to go out and sign someone, right? That's the option. It's interesting to me to watch Goot take such a big swing. You know, he hasn't done it since Za'Darius and Preston that round, but this feels like the big signing for him, because even then, like Za'Darius wasn't like a household name, so to speak. I don't know if you feel differently. Like I was like, oh, I know Za'Darius. I know he didn't say he's an edge. He was still like a backup in Baltimore, right? Like I feel like Xavier McKinney is like the name. He's, as you said, he is the name. He is like one of the best safeties in the league. I mean, he's someone that like I would have been happy if the Packers had drafted when he came out. So this feels like the swing. And again, like young, second contract.
Exactly.
Big, right? Like big number. It's all kind of coming together. It feels all in. The Packers don't do all in the way some other teams do, but this feels like as all in as they get.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about what the Packers might do with all their draft capital that they have, and could they use that as leverage in a trade potentially if, they don't get their prime targets. And so far it seems like they're getting the guys that they want to get and they're being aggressive. And I think that's what's been so interesting too, is we're used to seeing the first wave of free agency go. And then like a week later, the Packers are like, we got our guy. And it was like, the 80th signing of free agency when the entire wave has passed. So to see them go out and make like arguably one of the biggest splashes, good and bad, you could argue they had big splashes on both sides, in acquisitions and departures. But yeah, I think it tells you all you need to know about how the Packers finished the season and how close they truly feel that they are. And now they've got a ton of capital to work with still, since they didn't have to give any of it up. So potential to get, another safety, a running mate for McKinney, or I know the chat's talking about inside linebacker. Like, so let's go there then too. Do you think the Packers are done? Or do you think there's still more?
I was just going to ask you that. No, you answer. Do you think
so I don't. But I don't think it's going to be like, they're not going to like go get Patrick Queen now. Like it's going to be someone of value, but Devondre Campbell looks like an imminent release here. Not official yet, but probably on Wednesday that'll be announced.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the depth at inside linebacker is really shaky. There's some good ones in the class, but I think we all kind of hate the reliance on the draft because the board doesn't always fall the way you want it to. Right. So you've got Quay and Isaiah McDuffie, who is familiar with Halfley, and then a whole lot of, potentially Eric Wilson. Like there's not a lot there. So I could see them going out and getting someone at inside linebacker. I don't know necessarily who would warrant a payday or who they'd be really excited about.
Yeah.
But that's where I could see it. Or potentially like a cheap guard if they're not going to pay a John Runyon.
Yeah, I mean, John Runyon signed with the Giants for 3 year, $30 million, which I'm very happy for him. I know he, wanted to stay with Green Bay, but he got a really nice contract with the Giants.
And it was one I don't think the Packers are going to match. So
no way.
Go get your money. Way.
No way. Obviously we saw Frankie Louvu sign with the Commanders, so he's off the board. But it's interesting. Like I'm actually normally in the camp of like, I think it's okay when you don't make the first big splash in free agency on day one.
You don't want to set the market.
Yeah. And today the Packers were those people. And it's like, okay. Because if it doesn't work out like you set the market. I do think they got like good value for Xavier McKinney. Like it's expensive, but the contract is front loaded. Same with Josh Jacobs. Like it's really only 2 years. It's not that much guaranteed money. They can get out of it if it doesn't work out very well. Now they can kind of go and see who they can get, not in like bargain bin, but like second tier. I wouldn't be surprised if they signed a second safety. If they go out
like a Jordan Fuller.
Yeah.
Jordan Whitehead.
Or any of the guys that haven't gotten signed yet, a Jordan Poyer, who's, they can get whenever because he was released. But, just again, that like next level. I mean, I know that Cameron Curl has been a name that's been associated with the Packers since the Combine. So now that like they have their guy, find that second pairing. Because like I said before, it is not a complete room. Like it is Xavier McKinney and Anthony Johnson Jr. Like that is not a complete room still. And it's still not a strength in the draft. So that or inside linebacker is where I think that they would go. But yeah, it's I think guard. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring up John Runyan Jr. signing somewhere else could also be a sneaky need, but I think that they're going to draft a number of offensive linemen in this draft.
Yeah, and there's good ones, right? And historically, they play left tackle, and the Packers will move them inside. Like they have a type, they stick to that type. But I don't think he might warrant a little bit of money as a former first round pick. But in the same vein that we talk about like Patrick Queen, and wouldn't that be fun? I could kind of see the Packers going for somebody like Jordan Brooks from Seattle. Also a first rounder, just a couple picks after Jordan Love, coming off of an injury, so might not be available to even start the season. But the Packers are really good at finding guys that they still think are trending upward that they don't need to just throw in right away. And Jordan Brooks, you probably could plug and play if he was fully healthy, but we don't know that he is. So those are the kind of names that I would keep an eye on, like guys that are not prone to injury because we've been there, done that, but like just in general might warrant a cheaper deal. Or I could see them going with some prove it deals here. We talked about as these safeties get snatched up, the market is going to kind of thin itself out, right? And guys are just going to be trying to find landing spots. And a lot of guys could be banking on themselves in a 1 or 2 year situation anyway to go reset the market again in a couple years and get an even bigger deal.
Yeah. Just announced Austin Eckler is going to the Commanders on a 2-year deal, $11.4 million.
Let's talk about some of the other moves today. Kirk Cousins leaving the Vikings to go to Atlanta.
Yeah, that's wild. I know that that's been speculated, but that leaves a pretty big hole in the NFC North, like QB hole. So I guess the Vikings are going to go draft someone.
And Justin Fields doesn't have a market anymore, it looks like. So just really wild to think about the way that the NFC is going to shape up.
I wouldn't say that, though, because I saw a rumor today that the Raiders were really interested in Justin Fields.
But then they just picked up Gardner Minshew.
Okay, well, I guess maybe you're right then.
I think it'd be funny if Justin Fields went to the Vikings personally, but I don't think that's going to happen in our division. But,
yeah.
I think he's fortunately, however you want to look at it as a fan, but probably going to end up being a backup somewhere. And I think that's what tanked his market, is that nobody's going to pay him big money to go be a backup. I think he'd be a very good backup, especially for a Lamar or a Jalen Hurts, but they're already spending big money on their own free agents. They're not going to pay for a backup unless you're the Bills and you're bringing in Mitch Trubisky, then you'll pay for a backup.
He should go to one of those teams too, because those are the kind of schemes where he would thrive.
And unfortunately, you're injury prone at that point as a runner. Like historically, you're taking more shots. So he would probably see some playing time, and it would be worth having a backup of that caliber on your roster. But yeah, I don't think he's going to have the market that Bears fans might have thought that he would have.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you have questions, send us your questions in the chat. We would love to answer them. Yeah, I mean, the Bears were the first to make a move today, right? Well, they signed Kevin Byard, and then they signed DeAndre Swift. So they did the safety running back tandem as well.
Except we copied them this time. I was like, God, they're always just copying everything we do, but they did it first.
I like our version better.
I do. Yeah, I'm a big fan of ours.
You know who was quiet today? My family naturally was talking about this in our family group chat, but the Jets were very quiet today.
Just because they're going to make a bunch of moves on Wednesday.
Lots of cap space, very quiet. So I don't know. I think maybe we see Green Bay East again on Wednesday. Because did you see Aaron Rodgers and David Bakhtiari had a nice, sweet little backup or back and forth on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. It feels like if Bach's going to take a chance anywhere, like it's going to be there. Let's see. The Lions, I thought, had they made a very nice move in acquiring a new corner, from Tampa. I liked that a lot for them. I hated that I liked it.
Jeff Okudah. I know that there was some speculation since he has history with Jeff Hafley. Maybe the Packers would take a flyer on a Jeff Okudah. That's not going to happen. He's no longer available. I have a question for you. It's more a big picture question.
Okay.
Because everyone is saying this isn't a great year for running backs in the draft. Today, to me, seemed like the NFL like really made a statement about that, because all the running backs are off the market now. All pretty much, and not even just the big names. I mean, all of them. Saquon to the Eagles. Josh Jacobs, obviously. Austin Eckler now is going to the Commanders. Tony Pollard to the Titans, which I think is such a good move.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good one.
DeAndre Swift, as I said, to the Bears. Devin Singletary is going to the Giants. Gus Edwards is going to Chargers. Antonio Gibson is going to the Patriots. The only one left is Derrick Henry.
And AJ Dillon.
And AJ Dillon.
and Aaron Jones.
Okay, well, they just Aaron Jones today. But first day of legal tampering, and of all the position groups to get snatched up immediately, the one that supposedly teams don't value, quote unquote, if you're not watching this on video, I'm quoting, quote unquote, were running backs. Don't you find that very interesting?
Yeah, and I mean, I think we see like an ebb and flow of value from teams. Like they always kind of can predict a step ahead of the fans. Like inside linebackers, there was a surge a couple years ago. Safeties, now we're seeing that surge. Running backs, I think, are the same way, and it makes me a little fearful that the Vikings are one of the few teams that doesn't have like an established running back right now, because I don't want the aforementioned names to end up there. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value in drafting running backs still too, because I think the smart decision is to not overpay for a running back, as we've seen a lot of teams historically do. But at the same time, if the class isn't great, if there's not a lot of value in the production there, maybe none of these guys feel like true RB1s, then yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that was very notable today. And it could be just once a few go off the board, then they all start going off the board, but yeah, it was just surprising.
Is there anyone that you would have your heart set on for the Packers still, or I think we got our outside of Aaron Jones, Xavier McKinney, I think was it for me, the biggest name.
It's funny because I actually I don't know, maybe I just thought it was such a long shot that they would actually sign him, but he wasn't on the top of my list. He's perfect and I'm so excited. But I had just a lower list of names, not lower, you know what I mean? So I'm still out here hoping for Jordan Poyer. Don't kill me. I don't know. I think Isaiah Simmons would still be really fun, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm with you. Anything on offense at this point, unless it's a guard, feels like an abundance of riches. I don't think they need a skill position kind of thing. You know what I mean? But I could see them absolutely looking at a second safety or one of those big box bodies that we talked about. Inside linebacker, I think, is a not even a sneaky need. It's just if they're releasing Devondre.
Yeah. I was thinking about it because I saw that T. Higgins asked for a trade. And I was because how much I love T. Higgins coming out of the draft. And I was and you just said it, the abundance of riches thing. I almost think if you have, maybe people are going to think I sound silly when I say this, but I almost think if you throw in too many players like that into the mix, it actually can totally mess with your offense. The Packers offense was starting to click so well this past season. Let them thrive instead of throwing a T. Higgins into the mix or something of that nature. I don't know how you feel about that either, but I'd rather let them be for now. And if a need arises over the course of the season, then go and do something about it. But why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of deal.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about like stunting the development of the players that you have. And that was the fear we had last offseason
Yeah.
before, when we were like, hey, maybe the Packers should sign a vet wide receiver. Maybe they should look at a tight end. Like you've got 2 rookie tight ends that are coming into the season with no experience. What is that going to look like? And the Packers showed us what it looked like. And it
Yeah.
happened to work out for the best in that situation. But I don't necessarily think that's always the case. In this particular situation, though, and in this particular case, I wouldn't mess with it. As much
Yeah.
as I love T. Higgins, I just now if you still have Watson concerns, then I think that becomes a bigger issue. But you're also expecting the additional jumps of Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed. Like you might find we have spoken so highly about Jaden Reed on this show and that we think he's going to go for over 1,000 yards. Like I think the Packers pretty much have their wide receiver 1 at this point. And yeah, if Devontae Adams was like, hey, can I come back? I don't think anybody would say no. Like you make do in those situations. But as far as the logic is now, I would much rather have them go get some help on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Like if they're going to do anything, draft some players to continue to develop the offense, that's where I would go. Oh, someone just said I'm open to the Pack drafting wide receiver. Yes. That like continue to funnel that like draft and develop mindset because clearly it's going well. I still think they draft a running back, Blake Corum. I still think, they still keep feeding that machine because also like think about how amazing these rookie classes have been. Like these wide receivers have been amazing. Like why? And that's probably a discussion for another time, more of that like broad, big picture. But why trade for a T. Higgins? Why pay for a T. Higgins when you can just draft some of these young guys coming out of college who have been like on fire?
Well, and it's fun to like estimate trajectories, right? Because the comments are mentioning that I didn't say Dobbs. And I don't know if you've noticed this. I feel like Dobbs is so polarizing on Twitter and like I don't really get why. Some people think that he's like at best like a wide receiver 4 and just happens to have like a good connection with Love. Other people think he can be your wide receiver 1. So I guess where I go is like I think Jaden Reed has like more athletic upside. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking about like a true wide receiver 1, but I don't think Romeo Dobbs is ever going to be worse than like your very reliable 2 or 3 on your roster. Like you still want him in the rotation. If the argument isn't that he does everything the best, he still does just about everything like well enough to be on the field. Like that's how I look at it.
Huh. Well, any other thoughts about today? Today was wild.
Let's not do it again tomorrow because I'm tired. Like that's my thought. I got work to do, so we can't do this again tomorrow because everyone that's slacked at their jobs today now has to make up for it. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I have meetings all day tomorrow, so like it's not.
Who else? Okay, final. If they could sign one player, one player, who's the top of your list?
It's not going to be a player, but I'll just take an inside linebacker. Like I don't have an individual yet in mind that maybe Jordan Brooks. I think Jordan Brooks would be fun, but again, I don't know if he's going to cost.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you? Aaron Jones.
Literally Aaron Jones. Literally Aaron Jones. I don't know. I really love Jeremy Chin coming out of college.
Yeah, he was like number 1 on your big board.
Yeah, like loved. And he's such a good player, like he's such a good player. Like he's a 10.0 round scorer. And he's just like stuck with the Panthers, man. Like that sucks.
The Panthers are having a fire sale, so just like
exactly. So like
pay him anyway.
Wait to see what happens. Like
one thing leads to another.
Yeah, he's 26.
Second contract, right? This would be his.
He's fun. Pair him with Xavier McKinney. I mean, that secondary would be so wild.
I don't want to like keep this going. It's been 40 minutes, which I can't believe, but thoughts on Keyshawn Nixon if he is the starting slot for the Packers, because it sounds like they want him to come back, and I think Xavier McKinney absolutely helps that case if you want him to be that guy, but like I feel better about it with a really good safety. Wasn't in love with it before today.
I mean, I feel better about like everything with a stronger like safety room, right? But I still don't love it.
Yeah.
I still think you need an upgrade there, but I also still want Keyshawn Nixon back. Like I want Keyshawn Nixon back for what he brings as a returner.
Yeah.
And I also think as a rotational DB, like you should have Nixon in a room. He's a wonderful depth piece. But I think there's plenty of defensive backs to draft that in this coming draft that are great slot corners.
Jerry Jones.
Right. I mean, there's multiple. I think at also multiple different rounds you can go. Now that I've finally started doing my draft study.
But I mean, I think that's what we talk about, right? Is like the Packers historically take their third best corner and just shove them into the slot. And it's about time that we just see them carve out a role for a slot corner, because it has evolved so much, even in the last couple of years, that it's like, you can't just be like, you're third on the depth chart, get in there, champ. Like it's gotta matter.
And to your point there, like slot corner is not just, third best CB now. Like it's
right.
own like defined role that like requires a very specific skill set. And I love Keyshawn. And again, I think he has a lot of value on the roster and should be retained for that value. But he's a guy I want being pulled into like dime packages. I don't want him on the field for all snaps. And at this point, your slot corner is on the field for like base package, you know, and like, and I also think with the Halfway's defense, like things are going to change a lot, and you're going to be playing a lot more linebackers, and you're going to see that Xavier McKinney on the field pretty much 24/7. And so that slot corner role is going to change. And I don't even know if they see Keyshawn fitting that at all.
Yeah.
Like maybe they bring him back literally for special teams and just as a depth piece, and then perfect. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks on the defense right now.
And we're also not even considering Eric Stokes coming into the fold with Jair and Carrington Valentine. But these are all things that we'll save for another day when we need content.
Xavier McKinney is now going to play in a secondary with Jair Alexander.
Life is good. Life is good.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's so awesome.
I'm not sure we could have had higher highs or lower lows today. Like genuinely, I don't think it could have swung higher or lower with the players that were acquired and left. Like,
what I will say is that maybe this is where my final thoughts are. This team needed at least on the defensive side of the ball, it needs an infusion of playmakers.
Yes.
And Xavier McKinney is a freaking playmaker. Like that is what he does. If you watch him at all, like that man is a ball hawk and he is a playmaker. And I think it has a trickle down effect for the rest of your defense, if nothing else, your secondary. And I hope that it influences said other all-pro into increasing his playmaking ability as well.
There you go. What a way to end it. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us for 45 minutes. I don't think we expected to go this long, but this is what happens when we talk football. We could do this all night. We'll be back later this week with an actual episode, probably like Thursday, once we see what actually happens, once contracts are signed, pen to paper, see if any moves are made. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. And you can find the show on Twitter at PWSS Podcast. If you are new here and don't already subscribe to the show, please make sure you do that. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you later on this week.